Hey, everybody, it's me, Ken Heckenlively, with Twice as Lively. Yes, that's right. The title of today's episode, That Feeling When Things Just Click. Do you ever have those days where you might start out feeling a little bit down and you ask God some questions? And as the day goes on, it just seems that God is answering your questions. Well, I had a day like that yesterday, and I want to talk about it because maybe God's doing a good job. And if so, I just want to compliment him. Say, well done. Not that you don't always do great work, but sometimes that great work is just a little bit more visible than other times. But as always, we begin with our simultaneous sip. I have my Pete's coffee, a cafe Americano with a little bit of room for milk and some honey, because we need a little sugar with our caffeine, don't we? It's a little after 2 o'clock in California on the West Coast. So that means if you are on the East Coast, it is socially acceptable for your beverage of choice to contain alcohol. So get that beverage ready. Let's do that simultaneous sip now. Here we go. Ah, so delicious. So delicious. It's always a question whether I should have that next button on my shirt buttoned. It just feels normal, cool, and casual in California. But when I look at myself on the screen, I just find myself going, button that thing up. Notice I don't button the top button because that would be just a little bit too much. So I'm a little bit buttoned down today, you might say, but that doesn't mean it isn't going to be a great show. So as I promised you, I want to talk about that feeling when things just click. So what was going through my mind yesterday as I got up? Well, we're in early August, and early August is usually that time when I'm getting my classroom ready. And it's also complicated by the fact that early August is both my anniversary and my lovely wife's birthday. So I'm juggling a lot of things. I want to make sure that my classroom is being set up. I want to make sure that I'm properly celebrating the love that I have for our marriage and that special love I have for my wife. So this year, one of those three things is not in existence because I'm not starting up at teaching. And so I think I was feeling a little melancholy. And whenever I get a little melancholy, I like to prepare the list of good and bad things. So as I look back at my teaching career, what were the things that I can say were good and what were the things that were bad? Because every single job, every single thing you do will have some good and bad. On the plus side, I just loved my students. My students were awesome, and I think that they held a great deal of affection for me. I also loved the parent community, and I think that they held me in similar esteem. At back to school night every year, I would tell them that my job is to be a co-collaborator with them of good, healthy human beings. And I told them that I'm going to run the classroom in the way that I think is most advantageous to their child. But if a problem comes up, I wanted them to quickly alert me and I would modify what I was doing. And I told them this can go positive or negative. If a parent thought I was being too generous with their student, then let me know and I would tighten things up. If they felt that I was being too hard on a student and I may not understand what is going on in that student's life or the amount of anxiety that student may have, then I would certainly respond by loosening up a little bit. So I really feel that throughout my 20 years of teaching, I had a special bond with the students and with the families. Another thing that I was complimented on many times over the years is that my students felt like I was genuine with them. One of the usual bits that I would do is I would talk about how many things in the adult world don't make sense. And at the end of each one of these stories, I would say something along the lines of, hey, kids, that's why you should remain kids as long as possible because the adult world often doesn't make sense. They would laugh at it. It was gentle humor. And I think as they got older and they ran across things in the adult world that didn't quite make sense to them, they would remember my gentle humor. And instead of going off or feeling overwhelmed by it, they would just kind of shrug their shoulders and say, yeah, sometimes things just don't make a lot of sense. So those were the things that I found really good. What was really concerning to me, and not a good thing, was my colleagues in the science department. Now, I've struggled over the years as to whether they just didn't have good social graces or they just didn't like me. And I've come down on kind of a combination of both. And I don't have a lot of evidence either way, but I do have a couple pieces of information. There were 6 years where at the beginning of each year, I asked to be department head because when we got together, we would say, oh, okay, who wants to be department lead this year? And for 6 years in a row, I would raise my hand and I'd say, oh, I'll take that. And they never let me do it. Sometimes they would have a secret vote. Sometimes they would leave it to the principal. And for lack of a better way of saying it, I competed against people who had lesser credentials, lesser education, lesser experience than I did, and I always lost. Interesting. So there was that. There was the fact that during my 20 years of teaching, I published 20 books, which kind of makes me something of a unicorn as a middle school science teacher. During those 20 years, did any one of my science colleagues read a single one of my books? No, they didn't. Even though the directives that we got from the district were to be open minded and curious. So my science colleagues did not seem to be open minded and curious about anything that I was doing. Also, when I had made the mistake of acknowledging my science colleagues and giving them public compliments about how much they care about students, I was told that I had crossed a line and could I please remove their names from any other further books that I wrote. In the 20 years I've been, or the 20, with the 20 books that I've been publishing over 14 years, I don't think I've ever had that happen. In fact, the overwhelming response I get from people is, thank you so much for remembering me. But for some reason, my colleagues who had never read any of my books didn't even want to be publicly associated with me when I was giving them a public compliment about their skills as science teachers. During my 20 years of teaching, I had 5 different principals. 3 of the 5 were just terrible. I mean, not good leaders at all for different reasons. And it was unfortunate because I generally tried to stay away from principals because I had learned early on that something really strange seems to happen as an individual, a human being, goes from being a teacher to being an assistant principal to being a principal. Here's what I noticed. Most teachers, when you talk to them about things, you can see eye to eye, especially if you do it one on one. I mentioned that I had 5 principals in my 20 years of teaching. I probably had 15 to 20 assistant principals. Of those 15 to 20 assistant principals, most all of them were awesome people. I felt like I could walk into their offices, talk to them about a situation, and they would respond as an intelligent human being would. It was my experience that something must happen between being an assistant principal and being a principal. It seems that in order to get promoted from being an assistant principal to a principal, you must have a good portion of your personality and intelligence removed from your brain. In other words, the only response it seemed like I ever got from principals when I would raise what were good questions is something like this. Hmm. Hmm. What? I bared my soul to you, and that's all I get? Nothing like, oh, that sounds terrible, Kent. Oh, Kent, sorry you had to deal with that. Oh, Kent, what can I do to be helpful? You would think that a public servant might ask somebody who works for them when they raise an issue, what could I do for you? No, in 20 years of teaching, and I tell you, there were only like 3 or 4 times that I would ask a principal for some assistance. And every single time they disappointed me. I and it was the requests were as simple as you could be. And so I found myself going, what's wrong here? I've lived a lot of years. I've talked to a lot of people. I'm known as everybody's favorite guy. I'm known as the diplomat, the guy who solves problems without hurting people's feelings. And I'm confronted with the prospect of working with a bunch of adults who just seem to have no social skill whatsoever. The only answer I could come up with is, well, 2, they just don't have the skills, or 2, they freaking hate me. So I was thinking, that kind of bugs me. That kind of bugs me because I like to have good relations with everybody. And so as school was starting back and I wasn't starting back, I was feeling to myself like I was having this little dialogue with God. And I was saying, hey, God, I've made this change in my life. Um, and I made it specifically because I wanted to have better relationships with the adults with whom I interact. Kids were awesome. Families, awesome. Colleagues, bosses, not so much. And I just thought, 20 years of working with kids and having great relationships with families are fine. But, I start to long for those good adult relationships. And so maybe that was the feeling that I had in my brain, which was, hey, God, tell me if I'm making the right decision here. And so there I am in my office yesterday, and I'm doing some work on a new book. And who walks in to my office but the building manager and the landlord, guy named Larry. Now, Larry, I've never met before, but in getting the office, I've talked to him a lot over the phone. And so, Larry was really nice because I liked the building. And, I called up the number on the building, talked to him directly a couple months before I retired, asking if there was an office available. There wasn't, but he put me on a list. And so he said something is likely to come up the next month or two, and it did. And so then I got this office space. So that's the story with landlord Larry. So landlord Larry and the office manager or the building manager come in yesterday morning, and they say, "Oh, sorry to really bother you, but Larry just had to meet you." So I get up out of my chair and I go, "Hey, Larry, good to finally meet you." And Larry proceeds to just tell me how he looks at all of the books and pictures I have up on the wall, pictures with me being interviewed by Fox News, pictures of me with Robert Kennedy Jr., pictures of me with Tulsi Gabbard. And he just says to me, "I had to come and meet you, Ken, because I think you're my favorite writer. I'm just so excited that you have an office in one of my buildings because you support all the people I support, and I love the books that you write." So, it's one of those kind of weird things because I'm feeling a little bit downhearted, right? And suddenly, landlord Larry, who's, like the ultimate boss, because if he don't like me, I don't have an office. And, it's not like he's my employer, but, he's my landlord. That's kind of an important person. And so, landlord Larry and the building manager spent about half an hour talking to me about the books that I write, asking my opinion on various political issues. And I'm thinking to myself, in 20 years of teaching, I never had one of my colleagues ask me a single question about the 20 books that I've written. And so I'm thinking to myself, well, damn it. If I ask God that question and he gives me that answer so quickly, well, maybe I should pay attention. But wait, my day got even better because in the 2.5 months since I've left teaching, I have struck up a number of really great relationships with powerful people. One of them is the CEO of Publishers Weekly. Publishers Weekly is probably the number one book review publication. And this guy, Kevin, has really taken an interest in me, and he's helping me out with book publicity. And I'm saying to myself, what are the chances that I could get the CEO of Publishers Weekly to basically join the Heckenlively Brain Trust on how to be really successful as a writer? And so, you know, another point in God's favor. Thank you, God. Thank you for letting me know that one. But wait, it gets even better. So, one of the books I'm working on with the congressman, and both his name and my name will be on the book. So, I sent the first chapter to him. He writes me back, and he just freaking loved it. And so I said to myself, okay, so I got my landlord loving me. I got the CEO of Publishers Weekly loving me. I got this congressman loving me. And it gets even better. Last night, I went to an event at the Liberty Forum of Silicon Valley. It's a group I've gone to many times before. I've spoken there, and in fact, I'm going to be their main speaker next month. And while I'm there, somebody comes up to me, and somebody I've met several times before, and we're chit chatting. And he wants to introduce me to another person who turns out to be a celebrity in his own right. And we start talking, and we realize we've got a lot of similarities. There are some people that he wants to talk to that I know. There's some people that he knows that I want to talk to, and we exchange phone numbers, and it was just great. And at this Liberty Forum, they mentioned that I'm going to be speaking there next month, and the master of ceremonies says, "Kent, are you in the room?" And so, I stand up, and 300 people see me there. Remember my previous talk before them, and I get a lot of cheers and everything. And I'm just like, this is great. Thank you, God. I've been feeling a little bit down, but now I'm feeling pretty damn good. So I got my landlord loving me. I got the CEO of Publishers Weekly loving me. I got a congressman loving me. And I got 300 politically active people in the Silicon Valley excited about my speech next month in front of them. So that kind of made me feel like things were just clicking right along. Okay, moving to the talk that I heard at the Liberty Forum of Silicon Valley. It was this guy I'd never heard of, Kevin Lynn. He is the executive director of the Institute for Sound Public Policy, founder of U.S. Tech Workers, and champion of the American worker. And he was talking about a subject that I know absolutely nothing about. Now, something you should know about me. There's a lot that I do know, but there's also even more that I don't know. And if I don't know something, I don't fake it like I do know anything. So the subject he was going to talk about was the H-1B visa program. I have no opinion on the H-1B visa program because I don't think I've ever read or studied it in any significant way. So I'm kind of like a blank slate. And I'm saying to myself, okay, I know nothing about this topic, but I'm going to sit here for an hour and listen to him. I got to tell you, if you ever get a chance to listen to Kevin Lynn speak on the H-1B visa program, you should do it. He is incredibly articulate and easy to understand. Now, that's something I really value in a person. I went afterwards and told him what a great job he did. But if there's any subject which is complicated, for me, the standard for thinking if somebody's an expert is if they can give me a few simple points to explain it, and me, who knows nothing, can listen to that explanation and say, oh, okay, I feel like I got a handle on it. So, granted, I've heard one person talk for an hour about the H-1B visa program, so I could totally have a whole bunch of things wrong, but I just love it when somebody gives a talk that I can summarize in a couple minutes. So, for those of you who may not be familiar with the H-1B visa program, is it H-1B1 or H-1B1? I don't know. H-1B visa program. I have H-1B visa on my notes here. Okay. Just a couple points. Number one, why would corporations like it right off the bat? Because they don't have to pay Social Security and Medicare. So that means every worker that they hire, it's an immediate 15% tax break for them. So they don't have to pay that. That's great. What about the universities? Why are the universities dying to get foreigners into their universities? Well, one reason is because they can charge them full tuition. So they don't charge them in-state tuition. So more monies to the universities. So think about this. Immigration has been portrayed by the left as evil Republicans not liking immigrants. Well, it might be a little bit different. So, first of all, who's cashing in? The corporations. Who's cashing in? The universities. Also, for a lot of these tech jobs, there's a range, and it can go from, let's say, a senior engineer could be like 100,000 to 250,000. Well, if you get those H-1B visa workers, you can keep it on the low end. Okay. Now, the other thing to understand is the corporations can basically treat these H-1B visa workers like shit. They can treat them much worse than they could ever treat a regular American citizen. Why is that? Well, because the H-1B visa holder depends on that corporation keeping them employed. So they can work that foreign worker 80, 100 hours a week. It's a period of years in which you have the H-1B visa, then you get to apply for your green card. That has to be done by the corporation as well. So that corporation hiring an H-1B visa worker is essentially engaging in indentured servitude of that foreign worker. The next issue, whether these H-1B visa holders are taking jobs from Americans, particularly in the STEM fields. The data seems sorry about that. The data seems to show that approximately 10% of the jobs in the tech field are held by H-1B visa holders. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot. However, when you start to look at the data, a little different picture emerges. One of the things that you find is that while overall the H-1B visa holders are about 10% of the tech workforce, in the past couple years, they've been like 50%. So the claim that the United States is not producing enough STEM jobs is a lie. In fact, those with STEM degrees, especially American citizens, and it doesn't matter if you're white, black, or Asian, because you're an American citizen, these tech corporations don't want you. They want that immigrant. First of all, they're cheaper. They can keep the costs low. They can work you like a dog. And then they know that they have you. And they know that you will work in conditions which American labor has said are inhumane. And they won't complain because they don't want to lose their jobs. And even worse, all of the wonderful diversity of our country, from white, black, Asian, is discriminated against. And so I think of my wonderful students who are all colors and are American citizens. They're going to get out into that workforce. And even though they've got a 4.2 GPA, that corporation is going to make the decision to hire a foreign worker who's probably less qualified. And that's another thing that we learned in the talk, which is the H-1B visas are not granted on merit. It's a lottery. Another one of the rules, it doesn't matter what school you graduated from. You could have gone to the crappiest university in India and you still might be placed in Google, Tesla, Facebook, Alphabet, all of these places, because they're not looking for the best. They're looking for the cheapest possible labor. This is something that I believe both Democrats and Republicans have been guilty of. I will never forget being in a book club in Danville, California, which is a really wealthy area. And the subject of immigration came up. And this very liberal woman looked at me as I was arguing that we need to tighten things up to help American workers. And she looked me dead in the eye and she said, you know, every great empire needs a servant class. And that's what the immigrants are. I couldn't believe it. I was so angry at that. In fact, I left that group shortly afterwards because I don't care where any one of you come from. But if anybody refers to you as a servant, I want you to walk away from them. No human being should be somebody else's servant. They can be their employee, but I don't know. For me, the word servant sounds like slave. And I hope that's the way it sounds to you. So I can't say that I have a really strong opinion on H-1B visas after having listened to somebody for an hour and a half or so. But I do feel like I have a pretty solid framework that I'm going to test in future conversations, because I think that the job of every human being is to use the brain that God gave you and figure out how to best help your fellow human being. That's all I have for you today. Hopefully, this has not been the best part of your day. Hopefully, the best part of your day is having conversations and laughing and maybe crying with good friends and family as we demonstrate our value to each other as human beings. Thank you and have a great day.